Dumped over FaceTime after 8 months, I questioned if I was the toxic one. "You're emotionally abusive," she said, while I fought to comprehend her betrayal. After countless arguments and her changing allies, how could I be the bad guy? Reading time 20-30 minutes. I will strive to be as objective as possible in this post while explaining my situation. It has made me feel as though I am a crazy person, the only sane and rational one, and I am genuinely left wondering whether I am at fault or a bad person. It was the best relationship either of us has ever experienced, although we both understood that it was still toxic. We are both 25, now close to 26. We met on Bumble while she was in my small town in the south to help her friend move in. She resides in a major city up north. We reflect each other, with me prioritizing logic and her focusing on emotions. We started as a long-distance couple. Initially, I traveled there every other weekend, plus on my days off, with a maximum gap of 5 weeks between visits. We had a fairy-tale first date with immense chemistry and a kiss that felt cinematic, and we indulged in extravagant dates and gifts for one another, always making each other laugh. There are countless good memories, including parades, aquarium visits, and small dates, among other experiences. She has several close male friends, but I realized after moving to her city and meeting them all that they are strictly platonic, supported by the fact that she has known them for years without ever prioritizing their time over mine, rarely seeing them alone. On our first date, she made a humble brag about having cheated on all her past partners for upsetting her, but she claimed that she has changed and no longer does that. After she cheated on her last boyfriend of 3 months with her manager at that time, who I will refer to as AN, and boasted about it to him, he overdosed on fentanyl and she has his date of death tattooed on her neck. This led me to request access to her phone one night during my visit, and she agreed. I found nothing concerning there. I would continue to ask to check her phone once during each visit to ensure I was not fooling myself until I moved there, at which point she asked me to stop doing that, saying I should trust her, and I concurred. I made what I consider to be my only serious mistake during the first month of our relationship. We were walking down the sidewalk when a woman was looking at me intently. Once she was out of earshot, I turned to my girlfriend and said, "That woman just gave me flirtatious eyes." I blurted it out, intending to spark conversation with no ill intent. She informed me that this was actually manipulative behavior intended to inflate my value, and I agreed. So she established a rule prohibiting me from talking about other women in that manner. She posted about me once on her social media, specifically on her Instagram story for National Boyfriend's Day, 3 months into our relationship. At that time, I had flown her out to Miami for a luxurious vacation, featuring a stunning hotel, a cocktail yacht cruise with a sunset view of the skyline, a visit to the seaquarium, fine dining, and much more. A brief pause in the story. R is her longest friend, someone she has known since kindergarten, but she has not seen her in 8 years since joining the military and relocating to the south. R is 26. While we were in Miami at a nice restaurant, her friend R was going through a challenging period in her life. She divorced her husband due to his alcoholism, and the beautiful house they had purchased was struck by 2 hurricanes and became uninhabitable, leading to her being essentially homeless while her children stayed with his parents. R was in the bathroom discussing things that I do not wish to detail here, self-harming in a bathtub and threatening to undertake the most horrific actions I have ever heard someone threaten. We remained at the table for 3 hours as I helped defuse the situation. So I assisted R during a suicide attempt, but apparently she is not aware of that. I also frequently asked my girlfriend about her to ensure she was doing well. While we were messaging R, I noticed she had stopped communicating with someone named C 2 weeks ago, a person I did not recognize and had never heard about. I asked her to go through the chat, and she sent him a picture with a "Hey" with Riz filter, sticking her tongue out and making heart shapes while she was at a wedding she was invited to before meeting me. She claimed that she had accidentally sent it to him and had meant to send it to me, which I believed since she was intoxicated and has severe ADHD, sometimes sending messages to the wrong people. However, she continued to interact with him for several weeks, sending more images with hearts around her head, sharing intimate moments that we would experience together, and being far more enthusiastic to talk to him than to me, often using many more emojis. I forgave her because I had not seen her in a while, and we were apart for about a month during our long-distance relationship, so I guess she had felt lonely. It took her another month or two to appear as excited to converse with me as she was with him, but I asked her to block him, and she did. She has not spoken to him since, and we have moved on from that. I also discovered that AN sent her an explicit photograph and asked her to engage with him sexually, to which she responded with eye emojis stating, "I can't, I'm with someone I genuinely care about." She blocked him as well. 4 months in, while we were still long distance, a similar situation arose when her friend from a former workplace invited her out for sushi. She claimed he was gay, so she agreed to go with him. She expressed surprise upon learning that he was actually bisexual and considered it a date. They spent 5 hours together, after which she returned to her parents' house, which I can confirm. She kept all lines of communication open with him afterward and would ignore his invitations to take her out to New York City. She has suffered sexual trauma, dislikes sex, and performing sexual favors, is anorgasmic, having tried all sizes from 3 to 9 inches with 20 men and various toys, with no success, and had sexual relations with me on average once a month. I attempted to refrain from complaining because I love her, even though my ideal frequency of sex would be as often as possible. This had caused issues in her previous situationship. As she mentioned, it was mainly the reason for their breakup, in addition to his emotional abuse. After she broke up with me, she accused me of being emotionally abusive. Strangely enough, I had to block the man who brutally sexually assaulted her and inflicted her trauma on Snapchat when I was visiting one day because she was asking whether she could sleep with his girlfriend. He asked me if I have a large enough penis to have sexual relations with his girlfriend, and she left the conversation open. This struck me as odd. I told her she could sleep with any woman while we were together, but it still felt strange to me. I moved there 5 months in. I received constant complaints from her about the most trivial issues during the first 2 weeks, but that subsided. Our first significant argument began here. I thought we had an incredible New Year's Eve. I told her that once and she did not respond, so I assume she disagrees, but that is all right. I invited her to watch the ball drop in Times Square, but she preferred a local setting, which I accepted. We went to see our city's fireworks. However, the Uber driver arrived 10 minutes late and we were able to watch the display for only 3 minutes. At least we witnessed them from the warmth of the car shielded from the rain. However, standing in the rain for 20 minutes while waiting for another Uber was a different experience, but we cuddled for warmth and shared one of her cigarettes that she obtained from South Korea. Upon returning to my place, I ordered 100 of her favorite Asian dishes to share, ensuring she would have ample leftovers. We got drunk on soju and watched our favorite show together. We watched the ball drop on Hulu and shared a kiss. We cuddled up and fell asleep. Bliss. New Year's Day was a different narrative. We had a great early day. We drove to the city's best park to play soccer with friends. I spent 100 on her at Target and I prepared my favorite dish, shepherd's pie, using ingredients from the best butcher in my city while she took a nap. Suddenly, an idea struck me. Relaxing at my place could be monotonous since we typically just cuddled, talked, played video games, and tried new foods. The friends I had met so far made me feel really appreciated during our interactions. I suggested that she could post about me cooking her shepherd's pie on her Snapchat story, and after we ate, we could see people responding with comments like "aw," sparking conversation for fun before going to sleep. I had no ulterior motives, genuinely. I woke her from her nap to inform her that the food was ready and she came to retrieve it. Before we ate, I requested a favor from her. She appeared very hesitant. With a disheartened "okay," she filmed a video of the shepherd's pie featuring me giving a thumbs up and smiling. She originally captioned it "Chef my name." I was hoping for something a bit more romantic, and perhaps I was out of line in this, but I requested that she change the caption to include something about her boyfriend cooking her shepherd's pie. She revised it to "when he cooks you dinner," responding, "I don't want to post that you're my boyfriend." I was about to give up and tell her to forget it, not to post anything, but I politely asked, "Could you please say something like, 'My boyfriend cooked me shepherd's pie'?" She angrily posted it, took the food, and stomped off to eat without expressing gratitude. I was somewhat taken aback, so I proceeded to eat with her. Typically, she does not thank me, but something felt different. I entered the room and told her that I was unsure why she was so upset over something so trivial, especially after all the enjoyment we had experienced over the past 2 days and everything I had done. As I walked past her to get napkins, I noticed her furiously typing on Snapchat, and I saw negative comments directed at me. We are quite transparent with each other, so I asked what she was doing, and she revealed that she was complaining about me to her friend R. I was taken aback to learn that she talks negatively about me behind my back. She admitted to confiding in R whenever she dislikes something I do instead of approaching me directly. I asked if I could see what she was discussing, and she proudly handed me the phone. I cannot recall her exact words verbatim as it was quite traumatic for me to read, but it was something along the lines of, "He's being super controlling, he asked me to do this and I didn't want to." That was valid. I did not realize I was being controlling. However, R's response caught me off guard. R told her, "Girl, run, he sounds like a red flag, he resembles all my exes. You're in a toxic relationship, and I despise how this relationship affects you as a friend. He's a narcissist for bringing up what you've enjoyed over the past 2 days to deflect issues. I don't feel comfortable with him meeting my children," then sent her pictures of her kids unexpectedly to guilt trip her. I composed myself for a moment. I suggested that she confront R. I told her that it was acceptable if she perceived me as a toxic red flag. However, labeling me a narcissist and suggesting I might be a threat to her children when the only issue I have identified in this relationship is a benign off comment with no physical element is inappropriate. She began to cry, claiming that I didn't want her to be her own person, and then she rushed to the bathroom and sat there for an hour. She removed the story she had posted. When she returned, we ate the shepherd's pie while watching our favorite show. But at this point, this and everything in the relationship began to weigh heavily on me, and I started crying. She felt a bit guilty, thanked me for the food, and tried to initiate conversation about the show, etc. I did not reveal to her that in that moment, I did not want to be close to her and felt really betrayed. The following morning, when she needed to go back home, I expressed to her that I felt strange since last night. However, I didn't want it to affect our relationship, and I carried her bags to her car, kissed her, and told her I loved her. Our second significant argument arose when she asked me one day, "Would you still be in a relationship with me if I moved 3 hours away for 2 or 3 years for college?" At this juncture in our relationship, we had only been together for 6 months. I told her no, obviously not, especially since a major reason for my relocation was to close the gap in our long-distance relationship and be closer to her. She was profoundly upset by my answer, asserting that she believed that this would happen. I could not help but cry, and she resented that I was crying for some reason. She went to all of her close friends, informing them of what I had said. Then she proudly reported back that I was a bad boyfriend for not taking that stance because all her friends would agree with her. She mentioned R, E, and A, along with a few others. As I attempted to defend my viewpoint, which I perceive as sane and reasonable, my therapist agrees, she argued with me for 3 consecutive days, leaving me exhausted and afflicted with cold sores from stress. This led to 2 moments that provided significant insight into our relationship for me. Firstly, after she spent that weekend at my apartment, while we lay cuddling in bed, I remarked that it was astonishing that she argued with me for 3 days over such a trivial matter, stating that it traumatized me, and emphasized the need to refrain from sharing our relationship problems with R. I realized that R's constant prodding was the reason for her 3-day argument, as though she was using manipulation to vent her frustration concerning her own life into our relationship. She began sobbing and explained that it stemmed from childhood trauma related to not feeling heard and promised to stop sharing our relationship issues with R. As far as I can tell, she has upheld this. However, I cannot verify this, and honestly I feel that following our most recent disagreement, she may have reverted to confiding in her again. Secondly, and very importantly, it dawned on me that people like E and A are only capable of agreeing with her. If they believe I'm a bad boyfriend for something as normal and reasonable as not wanting to commit 2 to 3 years of my life to a girlfriend who lives 3 hours away after just 6 months together, it solidifies in my mind that they are merely yes men, except for extreme cases, and I have further validation from her recent outing with. Our third significant argument, the one that led her to end the relationship, stemmed from a joke I delivered the other day, which I will recount as accurately as possible along with my laughing face on Snapchat. I walked out of the barber shop at 4 p.m. and a homeless woman was out front. She spotted me, her eyes illuminated, she tucked her hair behind her ear and said, "Good morning." I simply replied, "Morning." The humor lies in the fact that she greeted me with, "Good morning," at 4 p.m. My intention was to make my girlfriend laugh, and I assumed she would find it amusing. 8 months into the relationship, things can become tedious over text with similar messages every day, so I try to find new ways to engage her. Clearly, I do not have any attraction to the woman for reasons that I believe would be highly inappropriate to share regarding cleanliness and health due to her homelessness. Such clarification is unnecessary. She became angry with me, reminding me of the moment from 8 months earlier when she established the rule forbidding me from speaking about other women in that way. Apparently, I violated this arbitrary and easily forgotten rule by telling the joke, and she chastised me for doing so a second time. Consequently, I reacted emotionally for the first time in the relationship and FaceTimed her, asking, "What is wrong with you?" She informed me that she was at physical therapy, which she was, and I replied, "I don't care," and she hung up. I told her that we had not fought in 2 months, that she was upset over a joke anyone else, hyperbole intended. Most people, particularly emotionally secure and rational individuals, would find humorous, meaning it was trivial, and that she was stirring the pot unnecessarily since she seems to crave drama, a tendency I have criticized her for repeatedly. Days passed and I considered it inconsequential, at least it was insignificant to me. One day, while I was working at the counter, my job requires generating 5 leads daily, and I have flexible time, sometimes working until midnight. I informed her of this. She indicated that she would be playing pool with E while visiting, and I expressed my approval. When she returned, one of the first things she said was, "I didn't invite you so I could talk about you to E," which surprised me since I assumed she hadn't invited me because she was aware I needed to generate leads. This bothered me slightly, so I asked her what they had spoken about, and she responded, "Stuff." At that moment, I realized that she was discussing me negatively with E based on her body language, and I grew angry but maintained my composure, approaching the situation rationally. Thus, I urged her to disclose what was said. While she certainly has the right to keep that information private, I pressed because I felt that it was something I deserved to be aware of, as it could lead to sabotaging our relationship. She shared with me, though the truth of everything she claimed remains uncertain, that she discussed the argument we had regarding the joke and mentioned that she agrees with E's perspective. Later that evening, we attended my girlfriend's game, where she invited E and A. She acted distant toward me whenever we were with her friends. I noted that she gave me a half hug instead of a full one and asked me to sit in the car while she and E went inside Wawa on the way home later that night. After the game, I observed that E was behaving differently toward me compared to before. Her actions and body language suggested a shift. The last time she saw me, she could not stop talking and gave me a significant hug goodbye. Now, when I positioned myself to get closer for a hug, she distanced herself. I immediately congratulated her on her performance following the game, but she rebuffed me, stating how terrible it was. I had no idea what my girlfriend had disclosed to her. I gently and politely requested 3 times that she refrain from discussing our issues with her friends, stop sending them texts, and utilizing their opinions against me. I cautioned her that if she continued this pattern, we would remain trapped in a negative feedback loop until her friends grew to dislike me because she fed them every one of our problems, unfairly portraying me. Instead, she could form her own opinions, contrast them with more neutral or blunt third parties, and think through things instead of airing our personal disputes to her entire inner circle constantly. I advised her that if something were so significant that she felt it might end the relationship, she could share it with her close circle, but any rants or venting should be directed toward random individuals I would never meet, not the people I am expected to socialize with frequently. She refused. I also admitted that the only changes I would make in our relationship would be to eliminate R from her life and to stop turning to her friends over trivial matters. I expressed my willingness for her to move in and split the rent as soon as possible, working toward having a child together, though I would wait to avoid being selfish, realizing she has her own aspirations. She had a tendency to accuse me of being crazy and needing therapy when she was upset with me. When I finally sought therapy, my therapist validated all of my crazy perceptions, affirming that I am not the problem, she is. My therapist has 3 decades of couples counseling experience. Her therapist primarily works in nutrition and lacks experience in couples counseling. 8 months into our relationship, I woke up to a text stating, "I would like to take a break from our relationship this weekend. I need time to reevaluate and think about what has been going on with us. I would appreciate some time until at least Tuesday to discuss this with my therapist. She has been on vacation and unavailable for consultation. Please do not come to my game tonight or the barbecue on Saturday. I cannot stop you from attending pickup on Sunday, but if you plan to go, please inform me and I will not attend. I do not want to engage in back-and-forth discussions about this. This is my decision, one I have deeply contemplated, and I will not change my mind. Please respect my wishes." I honored her request for space. On Wednesday at 5 p.m., I sent her a message saying, "It's past Tuesday, what's the update?" She requested a few minutes to finish work and indicated that she would FaceTime me. When she called me from her car, she stated that she made her decision that weekend but procrastinated until now to share it. She read a speech that had clearly been drafted by her friends, asserting that we are incompatible and need to part ways, both to focus on self-improvement. I called her out on it being influenced by her friends, just as her previous message had been, and she acknowledged that although it was her decision, I proposed that we can continue the relationship if I refrain from criticizing her or expressing discontent. The only reason I offered critique was to ensure our mutual comfort for the long haul. Even though we view certain matters differently, considering she stated on our first date that she has commitment issues and is only looking for a couple of years, I believed I could change her mind. She deemed that as toxic and dishonest, insisting that we are both harming ourselves by staying in the relationship. She noted that I approach everything logically while she acts emotionally and concluded that we had tried for 8 months but could not make it work. She claimed that my comments regarding the joke situation and my outburst deeply hurt her feelings and that she wished to end the relationship. She revealed that she shared my side of the story, encompassing elements of what I have detailed here with REA, a man named G who was my best friend since moving here but was acquainted with her first. She has known him a year longer, and her therapist. She stated that all of them, excluding G, concluded that I am emotionally abusive. Am I? G merely stated that he sides with her and exited the group chat on WhatsApp. I asked what everyone thought of the shepherd's pie incident, excluding G. She responded that they all indicated I was being controlling, manipulative, and overstepping her boundaries, and that her emotional response was valid because I was overly assertive. She admitted that she was mistaken regarding the college question. She said that everyone expressed it as typical and healthy to confide personal issues to friends. I did my best to clarify to her that she weaponizes their opinions against me, asserting that she manufactured every issue leading to our downfall by prioritizing R over me and using her friends' perspectives against me, ultimately leading to our relationship's demise. Instead, she should formulate her own views, measure them against impartial or direct third parties, and think through rather than continuously airing our grievances to her entire inner circle. She offered no response. I advised her, 1. Do not exaggerate and claim she has sex every 2 weeks. Instead, state that she has sex once a month, which is what I calculated, and be honest about her lack of enjoyment regarding sex and her anorgasmia as soon as it makes sense for the next man. 2. I informed her of what I mentioned regarding the toxic cycle of using her friends against her boyfriend for every disagreement. She needs someone who will comply with all her whims, not someone who has self-respect. 3. Do not cheat. And 4. Wait until she resolves the rest of her life, including determining whether she intends to relocate for college before commencing the dating scene, as it seemed to me the only focus she had was on soccer and friends. She acknowledged that she does not believe there is anything inherently wrong with me, stating that I have a good heart, simply that we are toxic together, and I somewhat agreed. I promised that I would not block her unless I noticed a man on any of her social media stories or posts, emphasizing that it would significantly affect me if she posted a male figure on her Instagram, given that she has only ever shared about me on stories, not in a concrete post. However, I assured her I would never block her phone number, seeking to maintain open channels of communication, and that I wouldn't bombard her with messages asking her to take me back or similar inquiries. I had already accepted the situation and simply desired an open route of communication. She did not respond to this. I instructed her to come collect her belongings this weekend, and she agreed. I concluded with, "I love you, cheese girl," followed by my signature line, "Guess what?" before hanging up, referencing our inside joke. If anyone has any thoughts, whether blunt or otherwise, on this situation, I would greatly appreciate hearing them. Thank you for taking the time to read. Story 2. I found myself trapped between a cheating friend and her oblivious boyfriend. Just tell him it's his, Alexis demanded, oblivious that I knew the truth. Mark, desperate for answers, later thanked me for advising him against signing a birth certificate. What would you have done? I'm unsure if this is the right subreddit for this. However, this event occurred a while ago involving a guy who eventually became a good friend of mine. I was a 20-year-old male at the time, and I was originally friends with his girlfriend, who was 19, long before they began dating. Nonetheless, I became very close to both of them during the time they were together. I ended up spending a considerable amount of time with either one or both of them within the 3 years their relationship lasted. He, being 24, understood that he never had to worry about his girlfriend being alone with me because I am gay. However, this unique position I found myself in allowed me the opportunity to observe both sides of the story when all the issues arose. When the girl, whom we shall call Alexis, started sneaking around behind her boyfriend's back, which we shall refer to as Mark, this type of behavior was not unfamiliar to her. I have known this girl since childhood, as she grew up several houses away. Thus, I had numerous opportunities to witness how she acted in her relationships. However, this long-established history was also the reason I did not involve myself when she started cheating. I had not yet become very close to Mark, having known him for only a few months, but since Alexis knew I could keep a secret, she confided in me completely. Oftentimes, I was even present to witness it firsthand. I do not necessarily mean that I was in the same room watching another man take her to bed, although that did happen on occasion. Rather, I was usually in the same building or right outside, aware of what she was doing inside. Knowing that the only reason she brought me along to some random place was so that she could meet one of her side pieces, and she had quite a few, most of whom I also became acquainted with and even formed close friendships with 2 of them. From what I understand, Alexis's infidelity began with one of the 2 guys who also became a close friend of mine. It started innocently enough when he began spending more time with Alexis and me while Mark was at work, which involved irregular hours or resting during the day. When Mark discovered the other guy was spending so much time with us, Alexis introduced him to Mark as her sister's friend with whom she had developed a friendship. While the story of how they met was true, he was much more to her than merely a friend. And as time went on, he was far from the only new companion to enter her life. Mark did not begin to question things until his girlfriend's behavior became considerably more suspicious. She would suddenly spend long periods away from him, making up any excuse she could think of in that moment. At times, she had the audacity to tell him the most blatantly obvious lies I have ever heard. For the longest time, I found myself baffled by Mark's refusal to regard the nonsense she was telling him as anything other than the complete truth. Her actions eventually created tension between them, resulting in frequent arguments, many of which I also witnessed. Some of these disputes even became quite intense. However, Mark still wanted to make the relationship work with her despite the increasing severity of their conflicts. Even when Alexis pulled a knife on him one evening while the 3 of us were socializing in his kitchen, he was not deterred from wanting to stay. He later confided in me that it had not been the first time she attempted to stab him, so I suppose he was somewhat accustomed to that by that point. To make matters worse, Alexis had a tendency to accuse Mark of cheating on her, despite knowing and admitting to me that she was fully aware of how committed he was to her. Moreover, she accused him of infidelity over the most trivial things as well. Simply looking in another woman's direction for longer than she deemed acceptable was enough reason for her to accuse him. She made him stop communicating with any female friends he had before they met, forbade him from liking photos posted by other women on social media, and was not comfortable with him even speaking to women other than her even innocently. Of course, there were occasions when she permitted him to talk to women, but those exceptions only applied to unavoidable interactions, such as when he was talking to a cashier or restaurant server. Even in those rare instances, if their conversations seemed just a bit too friendly to her, she would overreact. In the best-case scenarios, she would initiate pointless arguments, and in the worst scenarios, she would immediately start hitting him the moment the three of us were alone again. Frequently, she used these unnecessary conflicts as a guise, giving her legitimate reasons to avoid him for extended periods, allowing her to cheat without raising her boyfriend's suspicion. As mentioned earlier, she had many men she regularly saw. I am unsure of the exact number, I am aware of at least 7. And I will not detail the drama that occurred during our interactions with any of them. This post would become an entire novel if I attempted to do so. Instead, I will fast forward to the final months of their relationship when her inability to remain loyal resulted in a pregnancy that she was genuinely panicked to discover. She had very few clues regarding who the actual father might be, and this was all happening just a couple of months after Mark unexpectedly walked in on undeniable proof of Alexis's actions during the middle of her graduation ceremony. Her younger sister unintentionally revealed this to him, and it truly devastated him. Mark and I started to become much closer friends following this incident. We developed such a close friendship that I eventually had to ask Alexis to stop discussing her sexual escapades with me. I was beginning to feel guilty for the overwhelming amount of information I was withholding from Mark. There were so many aspects of their relationship that were troubling. She could cheat yet still felt entitled to his loyalty. Some of the men she was involved with were the same individuals that Mark considered his closest friends from high school. My guilt deepened exponentially when I went through a tough period and became homeless, only for Mark to open his door for me after Alexis asked him to help me. It was in fact his parents' home, but only Mark and his brother-in-law lived there. He had to sneak me around the brother-in-law as his parents, along with the sister who married the brother-in-law, were particularly racist. I am also black and homophobic individuals, thus I knew I really should not have been there. Unfortunately, I had no other options available at that time. You can imagine just how terrible I felt about myself, knowing that he was taking such a significant risk for me while I possessed an extensive knowledge of Alexis's misdeeds, both before and after her graduation ceremony, at which Mark only learned about 2 of them. I also discerned that the cheating was still occurring even after I had told Alexis not to share anything else with me. Although she agreed to stop telling me, she instead found ways to indirectly inform me or made it so obvious that I had no doubt about what she was doing. What prevented me from ever saying anything was the length of time I had known Alexis. She had become almost like a sister to me and had always treated me well throughout that time. She did not exhibit any of the same toxic behaviors in her friendships that she shamelessly displayed in her romantic relationships. That has since changed, or I would not even be writing this. However, as I grew closer friends with Mark, my role as her only confidant was becoming increasingly difficult. The burden of carrying a growing list of her betrayals was becoming more than I could handle. I thought I made it clear to her when I requested to be left in the dark about certain matters. So you can imagine my surprise on the day she discovered her pregnancy when she insisted that I had to tell Mark that the baby was his because she knew he would listen to me. You see, she did not just want Mark to be the father. She needed it to be him because he was undoubtedly the best candidate among everyone with whom she had been sleeping. Yes, Mark lived in his parents' home, but it was by choice, not necessity. He had a stable job and income and was still trying to make things work with her even after he discovered that she had cheated on him multiple times with various men. However, above all else, what really appealed to her was the fact that Mark's family had money. All the other potential fathers had significant issues that Mark did not possess, which ultimately prevented her from believing they would be suitable fathers for her child. They were either just as unfaithful as she was, broke, using heroin, felons, underage, or had various other characteristics she was not seeking in a father for her child. She genuinely expected me to lie to his face about something that would change his entire life. I could not believe the lengths she was willing to go for her deception, and she and I ended up in a heated argument. When I finally spoke to Mark, I did not disclose anything I knew he was not already aware of I could have, but I was still very conflicted about the entire situation. What I did tell him was to sign the birth certificate only after they performed a DNA test, advice he appeared uncertain about initially but later was very grateful for, as the baby was indeed not his big surprise. Their relationship eventually ended, Mark moved to another state, and he and I lost touch for several years. I have spoken to him since this all transpired about 10 years ago, and he seems to be doing much better. He has repeatedly thanked me for the sound advice I gave him that evening because apparently his ex came very close to actually manipulating him into signing away 18 years of his life. I honestly felt I owed him at least that much since he helped me in my time of need, and because I knew the unpleasant truth about his ex the entire time. He was always aware that I probably knew far more than I was letting on. However, he also understood the uncomfortable position I was in back then, and fortunately, he never held it against me once everything came to light.